Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you from a really cold and apparently very typically UK-ish week of weather. Can I tell you folks that within the span of the day, we had beautiful sunny skies, we had gale force winds, we had a hailstorm, we had like just intermittent, I literally watched the sky just go from gray to blue to gray to blue to gray to blue to wet. So if you've never experienced that in London, in the UK, I wish you that you don't. But if you spend time here, you absolutely will. And so that's my week this week. I am en route back to Ghana, and I'm really excited about our conversation today with my guest. So a little bit of background. Last year, I think I mentioned that I took part in something called Afro Talks. And part of that event, one of the highlights of the conversation was with my guest today. And so it's so wonderful to be able to come back and have this conversation a year later in review of what's happened in that time, because it sounds like it's a lot, and to just bring everyone up to speed, because this is really, really important work. It aligns entirely with this platform and what we're doing, elevating dynamic diasporans, manifesting a new world. And so let me get to her bio and then we'll get to the conversation. She is a strategist, researcher, and systems builder working at the intersection of Africa and its global diaspora and the future of regenerative economic development. As a founder and managing director of She Grows It, a Pan-African consulting and investment migration advisory firm, she leads work across green infrastructure, trade and industry, tourism, hospitality, diaspora engagement, governance strategy, and emerging technology systems designed to support long-term African growth and resilience. She has advised on projects ranging from IFC EDGE Green Building Certification and Sustainable Development Strategy to diaspora policy frameworks, investment positioning, and institutional ecosystem development. Her work consistently centers one core question: how do we build systems that allow African people, businesses, and communities to thrive across generations? Woo! Yes. She's currently leading the development of the State of the Africa Diaspora Report, a first-of-its-kind continental grounding document examining how Africa and its global diaspora connect across mobility, investment culture, skills, governance technology, and development systems. The report brings together policymakers, researchers, entrepreneurs, creatives, and community stakeholders across Africa and the diaspora to shape a more coordinated and regenerative future. And that is what we're talking about today, among other things. Dr. Ashley D. Milton, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Florence, for having me and for that beautiful introduction. I'm very excited to be here.
Wonderful. So as always, we get started with one question. Where are you from? Where are you local? I guess that's 3. And what is your craft?
Hi. I am originally from Los Angeles, California. I matriculated to university from a small school in Tallahassee, Florida. You might have heard of it, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, FAMU. I also like to say I'm a Washingtonian since I spent my career living and working in DC and bilaterally between DC and Africa. That brings me to where I'm a local. I am joining you from the sunny, beautiful city of Accra, Ghana, where you will be joining us very soon and where we met last year, a day before Africa Liberation Day. And who am I? I guess that was the third part of the question. Like, what do I do? I think I like to say that I'm someone who's always been deeply curious about systems, about how people move, how communities evolve, how economies grow, and why some environments allow people to thrive while others don't. Professionally, as you mentioned, I am the founder of She Grows It, a Pan-African consulting and investment migration advisory firm working across green infrastructure, tourism and hospitality, trade and industry, diaspora engagement, and then emerging technologies. But honestly, I think at the center of my work is really one question that you mentioned is how do we build futures where African people and the global African diaspora can live more fully, more regeneratively, and more intentionally? So right now, a lot of that work is showing up through the State of the Africa Diaspora Report, which is probably one of the most ambitious things that I've worked on to date.
Okay, that's awesome. So you mentioned now being so immersed in that work, but let's go back to why the where. So how did you come to be living, working, and playing in Accra?
Thank you for that question. I have always had this again, interests and systems and in lineage and history and culture. So I've always had interest in who I am. And obviously that's going to take me back to the continent of Africa. I've spent my career working and living and playing and investing on this continent. And what brought me specifically to Ghana, what brought me back to Ghana for living more permanently was, I would say, maybe some conditions in DC that I really wanted to be on the continent, and I wanted to be in a place that was affordable. I wanted to be in a place that was safe. I wanted to be in a place where I could thrive and like business was kind of growing. And around 2018, Ghana really represented a lot of that for individuals that were working on the continent. Accra just really felt like this metropolis. So whether you were in Congo or Kenya or South Africa or Dakar, it was like we would all come to Ghana. And then fast forward to 2019, when I really got embedded here, and then the call of the year of return happened. And that was really exciting because I've spent my career on the continent of Africa, and I didn't encounter many African Americans outside of, NGO work or embassy work. And Ghana was different. Ghana had these Pan-African roots and credentials. So there were a lot of diversity of Africans already here. And so for me, it felt right for me to kind of spend more time here. So I actually moved here from Dakar and was going back and forth and just said, wow, I can get anywhere from Ghana. I really like the cost of living. I'm really interested passionately in healing and in plant-based medicine. And at the time, they had created a formalized system for apothecary and plant-based medicine to kind of coexist in the society. And they had called African Americans home. So I felt that I needed to stay. I needed to have roots here, not just be rooted in Francophone Africa, which I had spent a lot of my career. So I came back. My first time in Ghana was in 2010. So when I came back around 2019, 2018, it was different. It was different. It was for much greater purpose.
And it was a very different place. I think that in that time, there was so much transformation in the diaspora. I think that was one. And then just economically, there were significant changes. So the year of the return really topped it off, as you mentioned. And here you were coming and being a returnee. And so let's understand more about your background. You mentioned the plant-based program and the apothecary. Tell us about Dr. Ashley, because I think that speaks volumes to a little bit of the diversity of who you are and how it all comes together.
As I said, I've always been interested in Africa. And my story starts where I'm from. So I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, one of the most air polluted cities in the world. It ranks, right? So I am a product of my environment. And I take a cocktail of medications to breathe. I have allergies, I have asthma. And all of that is correlation doesn't necessarily equal causation, but we know. So fast forward to university, I'm going to school because I want to be a lawyer. So I thought, and I take this environmental ethics course my senior year. And it completely changed the trajectory of how I saw myself as a professional in the workspace. It kind of really influenced my policy and political ideology. So when I went to DC, I went with this understanding that the environment is inclusive to our health, to our well-being. And it's not just nature, it's also the built environment and also the urban ecosystems. And so when you want to put, biomass incinerators in urban areas that are already densely populated, when there is plenty of space in suburban areas, you wonder why. Why do systems exist to disproportionately adversely affect people who look like me? And so I went to DC with these pressing questions as a newly graduated HBCU grad going on to work in the nation's capital. And I started asking those questions there as well. Like, why are these policies in place? Like, why are certain communities being disenfranchised? And fast forward, I'm in Africa and I'm like, oh, wow, same story, different geography. People are of the same complexion. So really my career, I like to say I'm a transdisciplinary methodologist because my degree background is diverse and it may seem disconnected to others, but it's very much connected to politics because we measure the environment based on jurisdictional lines. We measure the outcome of health based on decisions that are very much made at the policy level, at the legislative level. So for me, getting my master's in public administration and policy, and then going on to go and get my ultimate degree in the sciences was not only challenged by the systems and the structures at B, but also challenging in the sense of breaking down fallacies around why our conditions are the way they are because of politics and because of the environment, in that we are so connected. So getting to my passion of plant-based medicine and healing is because I've been on the front lines. I've worked in frontline communities in the middle of the forest of the Congo Basin. I've scuba dived the Atlantic Ocean to understand the intricacies of our mangrove ecosystem, right? Our coastal forest. I understand how carbon cycles and how water cycles and how disease and virus also play a part when our ecosystem is broken down. So it doesn't just mean the diversity of people to make a project implementable. It also means the diversity of our ecosystems that make Earth livable. And for Black communities and Brown communities all over the world that rely on the natural ecosystem, not going to a Publix, a Safeway, a Walmart for their food, but to the natural ecosystem. And when that ecosystem is destroyed, it affects the family structure. It affects their ability to not only maintain their livelihoods, but their social determinants of health. And the environment that is pristine, that is preserved, that is primary, is right here on this continent. We have amazing primary forest and megafauna, and our systems are what is keeping the global world in play. And yet we have a Western world that is super extractive of resources in order to build, because maybe it's not possible for them to survive in the natural environment. But the problem with that is that it's happening at unsustainable rates. And the truth of the story is very disconnected. And the disconnection of that has a lot to do with economics. So for me, my passion is in healing, and I'm very interested in plant-based medicine and in pharmacognosy because of where the world is going. And that's a tangent that is obviously aligned with my passion and is very much connected to my purpose and my profession. But as an environmental scientist, as a political ecologist, I'm very much understanding of ecosystems and systems, natural environments, built environments, and also financial systems, the real economy, because we can't eat money. We cannot eat money. So that's my passion. That's how I got here. That is the foundation of a lot of the work that I do and that I'm promoting.
And I absolutely see how you've connected all of those dots and bringing it back to the land, and then recognizing that the diaspora is a key link to that story. You know, I say the same things. It's if we don't understand our earth and we don't understand where we're living, then we are entirely lost. And we are entirely lost to a large extent. To your point, the fast food culture, the industrial farm culture, all those things are taking us even further away. So thinking about how you got to this place of being in a position to move this report forward, you know, what was the spark? What was the download? Like, how did it become this succinct piece that is now culminating in the report?
So I work in a consortium. It's not just me. And I also stand on the shoulders of many who came before me, for sure. So I was kind of tasked. I was voluntold that, you know, you need to do it.
You said voluntold?
I was voluntold.
I love that. I've never heard that. Voluntold. That's a good one.
Because I'm always talking about data, and data is dignity, and I'm analyzing and I'm researching and I'm creating these equations, and I'm saying, hey, we can't just use descriptive statistics. We need to be out here with anecdotal information. The way Black people collect data and tell our stories is very different than what they use with spreadsheets and corporates and, you know, quarterly annual reports. It's very different. And so I was told that I needed to do it. And so the report is really a continental grounding document, right? There's a lot of conversations globally about the diaspora. Diaspora is a business, but very little systems level work asking, what does Africa actually need? What are the barriers preventing coordination what are the opportunities for deeper alignment across investment, across mobility, across culture, skills, governance, and development? So rather than beginning with assumptions, we're beginning with listening, with mapping, data, with lived experience, and with difficult conversations. The exposure draft that will launch in Accra and across collaborating countries, it's intentional because this report isn't meant to sit on the shelf. It's meant to spark collaboration, policy conversations, business opportunities, cultural reflection, and long-term systems building. So again, when I was voluntold, I'm always up for the task when my consortium, my collective tells me to do something because I know it is for my better sharpening and I know it is for our collective growth. So I said, okay, I asked for a deadline. I was given a deadline and the document is here. But I think most importantly, it's not just, again, the release of it, it's the work that is to come. And so when I took on the task, I knew it would be difficult, but I didn't know how revolutionary, how innovative, how something like this has not been done. Meaning, I always say that I've created systems to help Black people remove lenses of perceived inferiority because there's been a question asked, who is the better? Who's better? And again, this is science. Like, I'm not making this up. That was asked and the research had been done. And it was determined that the more melanin that you have, it's just easier to survive on this earth. Maybe in another lifetime on another earth, maybe that was different. And so because of that answer, it has been embedded to hide our natural innate power. And so when I started to map, I knew that there were like layers of things that I wanted to see and map across geography, economics, etc. What I didn't realize is that I would come up with 250 plus variables that are layers. And each layer removed is a layer of that perceived inferiority taken away in the ability of the innate Black matter to rise. And when I say innate Black matter, we oftentimes are relying on these movements or moments or networks, right, to profess or to kind of ground that we are here. Matter is our atoms, molecules that are physically present, like we are physically present. And it starts with us acknowledging that. And so the more we are able to remove lenses of perceived inferiority, the more we can innately evolve and show up as our authentic selves. And this report does that. It helps us not with solutions, because solutions take us to be grounded in a commonality, a baseline of information. And that's what this report does. It starts to build that baseline. So we're not pouring into a skiff, and we can now move forward having difficult conversations, because we have to get comfortable having uncomfortable and difficult conversations for us to be able to move forward. And so as a divergent, I alone cannot write this report. I cannot diverge the solutions to our problems, because Blackness is not a monolith. We are extremely diverse. And I think that that's another important framing that this report starts with, is that we treat diaspora as if it is one thing, one person, and it is not. It is absolutely a diversity in a collective of Blackness that has the pieces that we need to come together. Because what a historic diasporan, foundational Black American has difference than someone who is by the definition of a Geneva Convention, a refugee from their country, whether it's by climate, by political persecution, and they cannot go back. How do they return? How do we see the dynamism of the different types of Black? Because we are not a monolith. So the difficult conversations is, yes, to the world, sure, we're Black. But amongst ourselves, when we get down into creating and crafting what evolution looks like for our future, then we have to acknowledge the diversity and give space for marginalized voices. And we have to do that now, today. That's the work.
I feel like I'm in a time capsule, not a time capsule, but like in a time warp, because this is where we were in the 60s, in the 70s, during Africa's Pan-African, and even before then, but where it really started to be part of the thinking that evolved Africa to the point where we actually were more connected. I always look at the stories of Kwame Nkrumah. I just recently saw Eyes of Ghana. When it comes to your city, make sure you see it because it's so, so, so important. These were visionaries, and here you are. You're being part of that visionary dialogue that takes us from where we were cut down during the Pan-Africanist movement, and bringing it back to let's understand who we are and how we be. And so I want to ask you, before I get to a bigger question, about Glocal Speak. So you mentioned the diaspora, Black not being a monolith. You've lived in many places. And so we want to hear what you hear. And that is a word or phrase or saying that is a meaningful part of your local, and why or how you come to value it as Glocal Speak.
Wow. Again, I work in a team, and I think that this is going to speak to them. When we were having our last co-contributors meeting a few weeks ago, we had opened up with this debate around "take me through there." The phrase "take me through there, take me through there," from the song. Yeah. Don't ask me the name of the song, but it's definitely a song, and they do a dance, right? And we were like, is that colloquial, or is that Ebonics? Is that Black English Vernacular? Is that AAV? Or is that like the Gen Z? And we kind of took it back to like, okay, well, this is what we used to say. And then ultimately we settled on, it is Ebonics, it is AAV, it is our colloquial, because it's like when you say to someone, take me through there, it's like, you don't just when you come to a village in Africa, you don't just show up. You have to come with someone. You have to go and meet the chief. You have to go and greet. You have to bring something. You have to do some prostration, some honoring, right? Some homage paying. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing in our communities. You don't just pull up to the spot, you got to call the homies and say, hey, I'm here. Like, take me through there, or you want to see something. We want the State of the Africa Diaspora report. Take me through there. How do we get growth and evolution? Take me through there. So, we need more people, more conductors, conductors in the Underground Railroad were the individuals that led people to freedom. So we need more conductors to take us through there. Yes, we need more accountable, transparent, committed conductors to take us through there. So yes, that's my work. Take me through there.
Okay. I like that. So taking us through there, let's go to something you mentioned about something that recently happened that is very impactful for the world. And that is the UN resolution that declared slavery the greatest crime against humanity. In all of our existence that we have this modern thing, slavery is. And so reparatory justice is, in many people's minds, okay, what do we do? How do we do it? Oh, what, and that I think has been a barrier because it's always been thought of as, oh, it's this monetary thing. So when I hear about your report and where it stands, I believe it is a systems thing. And where this slots in is something that I believe is a foundation to how do we start to administer and properly address the reparatory justice that's necessary. And so what are your thoughts on how this report supports that? If you were ideally in your mind to see what comes next in the reparatory justice landscape, the ecosystems that are working on it, how does your report now sit in that place?
Take a deep breath before I answer that question, because it's very heavy. I think many of us in the diaspora grow up carrying fragments of identity, fragments of history, fragments of understanding about Africa and ourselves. I think there's shame, definitely, misunderstanding. And then you come to the continent and you realize it's much more layered. It's much more complex, much more beauty, and much more unfinished than most narratives allow. And people might see that unfinishedness as struggle or as underdeveloped. And I see it as a canvas for us to paint and for us to come together and build collectively. So I think living and working across African countries has definitely changed me. It's forced me to think less romantically and more responsibly about what connection, contribution, and evolution actually look like. And I think to answer your question about reparative justice, I believe that it all starts and hinges on interest, no matter what type of Black you are, meaning you can be foundational Black American, you could be from the Caribbean or Afro-Brazilian, you could be continental African, a choice migrant, a refugee, or an intra-African migrant. It all starts with interest because we are all coming from different spectrums of how whiteness has disrupted, devalued, disconnected us. And so we do not need to start from a place of war, but if only interest in the connection, in the other person's story, then that allows us to begin the process of exposure, which allows us to expose each other to who we are. And in that exposure, we can engage on similarities and also where there might be differences. But at first, it starts with interest. And then from there, there's education. I grew. I learned something about you. Someone told me something just last week about their story growing up in the UK that I would have never known. But it was because I showed interest. I would have never known that the second wave of Africans that may have moved to the UK, which even happened before Caribbeans moved to the UK, felt so ashamed in their African that they would not even self-identify. Do you know the weight and the pressure of that story? So just that education alone, because of interest, I now carry not just my homegirl, but I also now carry the story of other Africans that had to hide in plain sight because there was no interest in who they were. There was no interest in their matter. And after that education, that's where you really can cook. That's another one of my colloquials. I like to cook. I like to literally
Yeah,
figurative. Because
Mhm.
once I'm educated, now it's on me. I'm empowered. It's on me, right? I'm empowered now. I'm carrying that story in a positive way. I'm carrying that now in a business way. I'm carrying that now and I'm thinking about how do we create less predatory terms in our financial systems so that people can see us. I'm not only empowered, I'm employed now. I'm employed to use this information to embed it into systems that see us. And now I'm even beyond employment. I'm going to flip it up a little bit. I'm going to add something new to it because I'm going to be an innovator. And that is the entrepreneurship. So in that innovation now, I'm going to create something new out of it. I'm going to create a new way for us to reclaim that story and remove that perception of inferiority. And in order for me to now do that and expand it on another level, I got to take that new innovation and I got to come back down to the first E, which is exposure. So I actually just walked you through my quantitative curve for evolution, and it is an exponential curve, and it's an exponential curve of ease. Catch that. Ease. So I told you what you needed to do to be exposed after you gain interest, what you needed to do to engage, how you could become educated, empowered, employed, and entrepreneurial. And once you become entrepreneurial and you have that innovation, make sure you come back down to that first E. Boom, that's it. So that's my reparatory justice. I've always said that I would get the contract to do the work on reparations, but that work on reparations, when people think about it in a monetary way, is going to be surprise money. It's going to be surprise money. The money that you find when you washing your clothes and you reach in your pocket and you find some CDs, some dollars, some pounds, okay, surprise, you weren't expecting it. The real work on repair, because reparations comes from the root word to repair, is for us to first have interest. We can't rely on anything or anyone else to repair our disconnect. We can't rely on anyone or anything else to acknowledge our matter. And when we acknowledge our matter, I mean, there's already studies is that Black people are the closest. We respect our moms. We respect our elders. It's us. We love each other. It's interest and removal of things that are not of us. And those perceived lenses that we're all walking around with, that's racism. It's not our problem. That whiteness is not our problem. And when we push that to the side, we can then focus on how do we grow? How do we move forward? And how do I evolve by connecting with other Black people in community to evolve? And again, once you are focused on that, it's easier to decipher which of your skin folk are your kinfolk and which are not. Because when you are in the duality of trying to battle racism and Blackness, you cannot hold both. Put this down, right? Take the lenses of perceived inferiority off. Put down what has been put on you that's not for you and evolve. And that evolve, again, it's an exponential equation of growth. So again, the connections are with more community connections, I can get to the next E. With more community connections, I can get to the next E. And that's only with people who are efficient, effective, ethical, equitable, conscious of the environment and making ecological decisions. So again, it's all grounded. So again, it's all ease. I'm not very fast, but that is my solution quantitatively and anecdotally to our ability to repair.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about ease. I love that. One letter, ease, easy.
Exactly. And then when you think about it, it's like ease, E-A-Z-E, ease. It's ease. It's E, but it's ease.
Yes. It's good. Wordsmithing.
Exactly. And where there's friction, there's not ease. Where there's friction, there's not ease. And the report calls out a lot of friction that the diaspora and continental Africans are experiencing. So again, where there's friction, where there's confusion, it's not ease. It's not easy. It's friction. It's not it. Wrong road.
You touched on something very important, which is the money side of things and the finance side of things and the entrepreneurial side of things. How, from a business perspective, have you been able to take on this work? So you work in a consortium, but when you think about research and all those things, how have you, or do you go about actually funding this type of study, this type of work as a group, as an individual? Because that's a huge, I think, barrier that people find friction and are unable to move forward. So what has been your business math around this work?
That's a very good question. For the past couple of years, we've done Africa Liberation Day, right? And we will launch some sort of report, some sort of grounding document, some sort of action item step for us to grow forward. And the work has been self-funded. To date, it has been self-funded. And we are having these conversations around who funds this work. So before I get to this, I want to also just mention that a lot of our diaspora engagement strategies, right, or our research, our work will come and it's attached to funding that when you look at the source of the funding and the funder, at its core, there is a stance. And that stance oftentimes is not aligned with our growth and our evolution, but our extraction, our continued marginalization and disenfranchisement. So when we think about this work, especially, obviously as the visionary, as the lead author and editor, of course, I think about the budgets all the time, but we can't dream on a budget. And at the same time, I also know that I'm operating on a tremendous amount of credit based on my lineage, my legacy, and what my ancestors have contributed to this world. So when I move, I have to move with that level of confidence and collateral behind me. But when it comes to doing this work, we are in conversation with supporters. This report is, the foreword is being written by the head of UNESCO here in Ghana. And this work is foundational and critical to a lot of what has been done around acknowledging the need for reparations to, again, foundational Black Americans, descendant of enslaved Africans, but also African countries who lost a significant amount of talent, not just in the transatlantic slave trade, but also in what happened during colonization. There's funders that are interested in supporting this work that are connected to that resolution. Also, the new resolution on calling, the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, the greatest crime against humanity. There are a lot of conversations around what this work is and how it's funded. For us, there's a lot of interest, particularly now since we've been at this for years. And now we're coming together with more reports, more data, more dignity. We're moving forward optimistically, but cautiously, because what we don't want to do is to align ourselves with individuals or institutions that purport to do work that have a track record of not doing work. And I'm not mentioning organizations because I'm being very strategic. But what I will say is that if this is such a novel, revolutionary, and innovative report, and the things that we are calling out have not been done, it doesn't matter if you've been around since the Dutch East India Company or you've been around for the last 5 years, something could have been done. And so I think on the sense of funding, what we're going to continue to do is have conversations. What we're going to do is continue to have open call for sponsorships and partnerships and collaboration. What we're not going to do is tie our hands and tie our vision or our mission or dilute the impact that we want to have with our weapons of words with what we're saying. Because at the moment you attach yourself to funding, you subscribe to the very systems in which they subscribe to. And I am no stranger to this type of revolution. When I finished my dissertation, I had some knockdown dragouts with my committee chair over the acknowledgement of my document. And there was a push for me to acknowledge funding that I had received. And, I don't shy away from acknowledging that I'm a past Fulbright scholar. I've received millions of dollars in grant money from different organizations. However, this document at that time of my life needed to acknowledge that Black Lives Matter and needed to be dedicated to Patrice Lumumba for some work. And so, when you get funding, they want to be front and center, but not necessarily in the trenches. And what I'll leave with this is that I'm not new to it. I'm true to it. I'm very excited to be in this position and to be in this place, to be able to be choosy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is a perfect point because I'm also in this transformation for my business where I'm raising a fund, and I've talked about it on the podcast. It's called the Pan-African Creative Trust Fund, and it's aimed at funding creators of indigenous and endogenous content, right? So it's for us, by us, for the diaspora. And a key pillar of the work of that is that interest that you mentioned is front and center because it is for the diaspora to now understand who we are that supports this. And then it feeds our children. And then it creates a whole curriculum that I feel like is found in a large part in your document that will then be distributed in story form on many levels. And, from children to adult learners to multi-generational information. And so it has me thinking about a book that I'm reading. It's called White Malice. And it speaks to this idea that during the Pan-African movement, the African liberation movement, the US, through the CIA, spied on us. And so that choosiness is really important. We have to be very choosy. We have to understand which kinfolk are kinfolk and otherwise. So to your point, I love that. And I think that we will get there. And the idea of self-funding until the right people, the right partners come around, it makes perfect sense. And kudos to you for that. And so I want to ask you about a mindset hack. How do you hack your mindset? This is deep work. This is heavy work. How do you hack your mindset?
That's an interesting question. One thing I learned about evolution is that it requires proximity. You have to get close to people. You have to get close to the problems, close to the environment that challenge your assumptions. Let me say that again. One thing that I've learned is that evolution requires proximity. And I explain this to people is that I always am collecting data. Because sometimes I will put my body on the line. I will put myself through it. I will be right, And again, this is what you were just saying. You know, there are people that are watching. And I think that there are diaspora that, again, all skin folk are not kinfolk. We have to train. And then I think this is what my school of thought, my consultancy wants to ensure that our team is trained in, is the duality, this double agent. Because if we are transacting in these spaces, we have to be transparent about what we're going through. And I think that's a lot of conversation that I want to have once we acknowledge that we're not a monolith. Because as the type of Black that I am, I want to understand why there has not been enough conversation amongst choice migrants about the difficulties. So again, you have to get close to the people, close to the problems, close to the environments that challenge your assumptions. A lot of my growth came from putting myself in places and spaces where I had to listen more. I had to adapt more, learn to kiss some rings, become more comfortable being uncomfortable. And every day I am challenged, every day. And it's a good haze because it teaches you a lot. It teaches you to think curiously, right? Curiosity has probably been my greatest mindset hack of them all. Curiosity doesn't kill the cat. The cat has 9 lives. So,
right.
evolution
Yeah.
requires proximity for sure. And curiosity is the best way to hack that.
Yeah. That's definitely humanity requires it, right? So that's how we survive, curiosity. So here we are. Walk us through next week. What's going on?
Okay, so we're putting the liberation back in Africa Day. We will release the exposure draft of the State of the Africa Diaspora report across the continent. More than anything, I hope that people will engage with it, challenge it, build from it, contribute to it, because the future of Africa and its diaspora cannot be built by isolated actors anymore. It requires coordinated imagination, honesty, and participation.
Okay. We're looking forward. So if our listeners are interested in finding a way to participate, to be engaged, how can they do that?
They can visit africadiasporareport.org to sign up for the event, to whether that be in person or online. They can also use that website to be able to download the report, access the executive summary, and to stay up to speed with what we have going on. We will be releasing audiobook chapters of the report. We will be releasing podcasts associated with each chapter so that the information is digestible. We'll also have shorts and infographics because we understand that people take information in different forms and different mediums, and we want to make sure that it goes out in all of those ways. We intend on releasing the report in multiple languages: French, Portuguese, Spanish. We will explore other African languages as well. And beyond releasing the report in these languages, it's mostly about the additional collateral of getting it out and making sure that those are in multiple languages as well. We really want Africa and its diaspora to really own this. This is our time. It's our ability to collect our receipts, to own our data, and to use it to promote our dignity.
I'm looking forward. This is so exciting. So exciting. So Ashley, we have talked all about this work, and now we want to know who Ashley is when she's not working and writing and researching. We like to know if you're a reader, a watcher, or a listener. And what are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens? Or what else do you do in your leisure downtime?
My most recent is that I did see the movie Their Eyes Are Watching Ghana. It was incredible, beautiful. I just want to show it to the world. Another short that I most recently saw was a friend of mine, a dear sister, a mentor, a leader in our space. Mohameda debuted her short film, When Malcolm Smiles.
Hello, Glocal citizen.
Listen, those were 2 of the most impactful visuals cinematically that I've seen in the last year or so. But outside of work, I am an avid runner. I run a lot. I scuba dive. I roller skate. I love fashion and design. I think all of those things actually influence my work more than people realize.
Oh, really?
Of course, running teaches endurance. Scuba diving teaches presence and respect for environments larger than yourself. Fashion,
absolutely.
Right. I mean, in the ocean next to, manatees and whales
Yeah.
and all this amazing things. Even the small things can
Yeah.
take you out, not just the big things. Fashion reminds me that culture is language. And skating honestly reminds me not to take myself too seriously. I mean, I've busted my out here, all right, on skates, all right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but ultimately,
Oh, I love it.
balance is important, right? So when you're carrying work that's this big, you can't be just in it. You need other things. And so yeah, I think my extracurricular activities definitely influence the work that I do.
Yeah. So diving, where did you learn to dive?
I have done, and this is going to be a plug, I've done all of my dive training. So all of my technical training out of Dakar, Senegal, at a
Oh, I
shop
love it.
called Nautilus Dive Shop. Shout out to Hilda.
Uh-huh.
That is my home dive center, and I absolutely love them. So I am a certified dive master. And the next training that I will be doing will be instructor, and that will be like the ultimate outside of like diving.
Nice.
Yes, and I've dove all over the world, and it's one of my favorite pastimes. So whenever I travel, the first thing I always ask is, "Can I dive? Where can I dive? Where are the museums? And where can I find sake?"
Okay, that's good to know. You said you're a cook, so
I do,
I guess,
and I do take cooking
sake.
classes wherever I go. So it's scuba diving, museums, sake, and someplace where I can learn how to make the local food, especially if I absolutely love to cook that local or eat that local cuisine. I want to learn how to cook it. So I'll be in there. Risk game.
That all sounds like fun. It sounds like like you have self-care in your mindset. So that's a good thing. Ashley, this has been wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your time, sharing your story, sharing your work with all of us. I know it's going to be a success. I know it's going to take us to new places. That's where we are right now in our human evolution. And so before we sign off, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I want to thank you so much for first having me and hosting me. It's been a beautiful conversation. It's made me think in ways that I haven't been able to kind of unpack before. And it's just been a breath of fresh air, taking a step away from editing and producing this document, this event. I think I'll leave people with, let us have more interest. Let's acknowledge that we are not a monolith. And I love to say that the Blacks, there are different type of Blacks, okay? And if we have interest, we can more seamlessly connect and evolve.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. All right, Glocal citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Please do like, share, subscribe, check out the show notes because they're gonna be rich. And it will have all the information about how you too can be part of the release and follow up on the report. This is important work that we're doing, folks, and we're here for you, for us too. We like telling stories, but for you. So until next time, bye for now.